every day that a rocket scientist decides to start manufacturing splitboard bindings. I caught up with John Keffler to learn more about the company and how he splits his time between space pursuits and splitboarding in this week's Business Spotlight. Joining us this morning on Mountain Mornings is John Keffler, the founder of Phantom Splitboard Bindings. Good morning, John.
Good morning. How are you?
Great, thanks. Tell me about how you started the company.
Well, I was thinking about that actually earlier today, and I think it's been almost 10 years since it kind of really caught the bug for the backcountry. I started off just probably like most people, really riding inbounds, and then wanting to kind of explore more and started pushing out to the outer edges, and started into side country, and then got my first taste of actually like kind of being in the backcountry on some snowshoes, and kind of worked your way from there. And at that time, soft boot bindings were out. There was a few different options, but it was still relatively small. And I started running into some people here in Colorado that were splitboarding, but using like an AT boot. And so that kind of caught my interest. Getting to know those guys and find out like kind of why you might want to splitboard in something other than a traditional snowboard boot got me thinking about like how to make the whole thing, kind of the whole binding itself, more built around that particular boot as opposed to a traditional snowboard boot.
Well, what was the inspiration for the Phantom binding system?
I would say like the big tipping point for me was I went with one of these buddies. His name is Barrows. Here in Colorado, and we went to go hike up this couloir in the Indian Peaks, and it was springtime, so the couloir is all frozen, and so you're wearing full crampons, and I had my traditional snowboard boots on, and it was really difficult. And he's just kind of cruising up this thing because he's just got crampons on a plastic shell boot, and it all works really well. And so when we got to the top, I just looked at him and I was like, man, I think I expended like twice, 3 times the amount of effort than you did. And we were hoping to do a lot more runs that day, but my feet were so exhausted, we just kind of chilled at the top, waited for it to soften a little bit. And this is also kind of where I thought, well, this is where I'll get, a little bit of the advantage, because I'll be back on the soft boots in a traditional snowboard kind of setting and be able to ride down this couloir. And it hadn't really softened that much because we weren't as patient maybe as we should have been, so it was pretty firm. And it just showed me that like there's some advantages that you could gain on the downhill as well as the uphill from switching to a boot that's like a plastic shell as opposed to traditional soft boot. So that was really like the impetus that one day where I was like, all right, you've convinced me. I think I can see why you'd want to do this in the backcountry.
We're wrapping up the skiing and snowboarding season, but anything new this season that you want to let people know about?
The last piece that I always wanted to get to, but I didn't know if it ever would be possible, would be boots. They're a very difficult thing to manufacture on your own. I can go off and design and manufacture the bindings without too much special equipment, but for boots, it's an incredibly intensive process, and there's a lot of tooling that you need and things like that. So the boots, this was the first year that we came out with a boot that actually has our name on the side of it, and it was a really incredible thing. It almost didn't happen. It was a year ago this time that we had to make a decision on whether or not we were going to place an order for a very significant financial commitment out of myself, and I now have a 50-50 business partner. But we did it, and it was right when the pandemic was hitting and right in the middle of like the stock market crashing like a rock. And so it was a bit nerve-wracking, but we did it. And this year, the boots have been really well received. The thing that we put so much into the boots was how would they ride? And that's the thing everybody asks about our setup is, yeah, I get it that it's going to tour really well, but how's it going to ride? And for years, it was, well, try and find this boot and maybe need to modify it to really get it the way you want it to ride. But this year was the first year where we were able to create a boot that I think you can pretty much just take it out of the box, put it on, and you're going to have a really good time.
Well, John, thank you so much for joining us on Mountain Mornings.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.